So in the last video, I talked about why I don't use a lighting setup on my camera when I'm shooting at these live events and these shows. Next, I want to talk about what my camera settings are and how I edit that footage in post. So I shoot on a Sony a7 III. I've had it for the past 5 years and it's my workhorse. I use a 24mm G Master lens to shoot all my content. It's my main prime lens that I use. I use a wide angle lens from time to time, but most of the footage I shoot and the footage I'm gonna show that I edited from a show, all shot with a 24mm. I know a lot of people are intimidated by this, but you do have to shoot an S-Log 3. I was intimidated with it at first too, because it is kind of hard to work with, but it's gonna give you the most dynamic range on your footage. It's not gonna crush the blacks. It's gonna leave a lot of detail in there in your midtones and your highlights, as well as your shadows. So I just think that for the purpose of shooting in these dark spaces sometimes, when I was at these live shows, I saw a lot of benefit and I really like the results of shooting an S-Log 3. With S-Log 3, that also opens up the aperture a lot to about 800. You might think it's gonna look gritty. It kind of does, but it's not that noticeable and your images are going to look sharp. It does have a little difficulty focusing on a subject from time to time, mainly because it's gonna, I guess the best term for your footage would be it's gonna look washed out. It's gonna have a little bit of a hard time grabbing onto a subject. I tend to run into that here and there, but it's not as bad as you think. But for the purpose of shooting in these dark spaces and being able to use a higher ISO and not having real grainy footage, you're just gonna see the benefits in post. So let's take a look at that and we'll see the results in this style of shooting. All right, so we got our footage here in Adobe Premiere and we got our color editing workspace here set up. So I just wanna scroll through, see what I got. I'm not gonna start chopping this up and finding my best shots until after I get my color correcting and I have a LUT put on there. I definitely wanna find a nice shot to start off with. So I really like this shot. I like the way the light is hitting the top of the hat. And I really like just, this highlight here. But this is what I'm talking about, man, is that, at these live shows, if I had a bright ass light on him, you wouldn't see everything else that's going on. Yeah, his face isn't, really light or highlighted, but that's cool. I like the mystery in this. I feel like there's an atmosphere to this shot. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create an adjustment layer. Hit OK. And I'm just gonna call this CC for color correct. And I'm gonna click and drag that, just stretch it out past where my marker is. And then I'm gonna make sure I got that selected before I start making my edits. So the only thing I wanna touch in this basic correction is the white balance. I don't wanna hit this auto. I'm not gonna mess with any of these settings here, the exposure, contrast, shadows, any of that stuff, because you're gonna be here all day trying to make these adjustments in here. I'm gonna show you a little trick, but before that, I wanna make sure my white balance is adjusted a little bit. I can see the greens are kind of spiking just a little bit. So I'm just gonna get my little eyedropper tool here, find as close to a white space as possible, hit that, and kind of brought the levels down just a little bit. As you can see, it made its adjustments, but that's the only thing I'm gonna do here. I'm not gonna touch any of these other settings. The one area that I'm definitely going to work in is right here under curves. So this is where we're gonna make our adjustments. So the first thing I wanna do is create points here in my shadows, in my midtones, and in my highlights, because I don't want it to affect, obviously wherever I put an anchor, it's not gonna affect from that anchor point. So if I drag this down a little bit, as you can see, it's darkening my image. And I'm also keeping an eye on my lumetri scopes here. If I go too far, too close to zero, obviously you're just crushing everything black. Kind of like where that's at right now. I might make some adjustments here and there, but this is why we create adjustment layers, so that we can take a look at our footage and see how it's affecting every clip that we drop in there. And we're not going through each individual clip trying to make adjustments. So right here in our midtones, I'm just gonna bring this up just a bit, and then my highlights, I wanna bring that up just a bit. At this point, I feel like I got a well-balanced image. I don't wanna do too much editing in this adjustment layer, and I also don't wanna just do too much crazy coloring in this either. Like, we can go in here, start bringing down tones. What I do want to do is add a LUT to this. Keep in mind that these recap clips that I'm putting together for shows, I usually want to have this done and ready by either the next day or the next couple of days after the show. I want to get this footage out there as soon as possible. So the next thing I want to do is add a LUT to this. When it comes to LUTs, it's really just a preference. It's completely solely based on your preference and your choice. So again, we're going to create another adjustment layer. And I'm just going to double click on that and just call it LUT. Now I'm going to click and drag that across right above our clip and our other adjustment layer with our color correction in it. And I'm going to make sure I got that selected. And I'm going to go to creative. And then again, I have LUTs saved that I use on a regular basis. So I'm just gonna go to those and see what I can find. And what's cool is that I actually got these LUTs here that are called Concert. So I'm gonna go through them and I'm gonna see which one best fits. And I kind of like this one, man. It kind of softened like my dark spaces up a little bit. You know, you could kind of see that there. Bam, bam. Kind of did this like wash over it. Again, you can adjust this with the intensity. It doesn't have to be completely used, so I might just drop that to about 60%. Obviously, I want to go through all my footage and make sure that it all looks good, right? You know, there's a good shot. I might clip that out. You know what I mean? There's a shot here that I took of some guy getting tattooed. I just want to take a look at that, make sure that looks all good. And I'm feeling it, man. I like the vibe, I like the tone. And then at this point, I'm gonna cut clips. I'm gonna lock my adjustment layers, and then I'm gonna cut my clips out, you know, and use what I want to use, and then just piece that all together and put together a reel. So this was just a little insight into my editing process, the way I set up my camera for these shows. Obviously, it's, you know, a matter of efficiency and speed as well, because I do want to get this footage out as soon as possible. I don't want to sit on it for too long. I want to get it out to the artists so that they can share it. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.